Hey guys, welcome to this video, and in this video we will be going to take a look how we can integrate Postgres with Fabric CA. And this time we will be going to use the local installation of Postgres. I'm going to use Docker for Postgres as well as the Fabric CA, and we will be going to implement the verify full SSL mode. So in order to connect to the Postgres, we will be needing the client certificate and the root certificate. So without those credentials, we will not be able to connect to the Postgres. So for generating up those certificates as well as those keys, private keys, I have written one script which is this cert.sh. So this is the script, and let me just make the content here, wrap here. So basically this is the script, and so what this script is going to do is it is going to create the certificate for the Postgres server. So it is going to create the server key and the server certificate as well as the root certificate for generating up those certificates. And after that, we are going to create the private key and the certificate for the client, so that client can use those certificate to connect to the Postgres. And these same client certificates are going to be used by the Fabric CA server, and using these certificates it is going to connect to the Postgres instance, and then it will be again like storing those certificates and those keys onto the Postgres database. So we'll take a look on that part as well, but as of now, let's open up the terminal and let's run the script to generate the certificates. So let me open my terminal here, and now let's run that script, which is cert.sh. So here it has generated the certificate for the Postgres, the server certificate basically. And now it's time to generate the client certificate. So here we have to pass the key. So for key, you can pass like any passphrase. So I'm going to pass 1234 as of now. Again 1234. This time also. So it has created some certificates. Let's go and see those certificates. So here a directory got created, which is this Postgres certs, and inside this directory we have some certificates. So we have root certificate, which is Postgres is going to use, and then we have the server certificate and the server key, and there we have another folder which is client. And inside this client folder we have the client certificates which our client is going to use in order to connect to the Postgres. And for our case, the client is going to be our Fabric CA server. So our Fabric CA server is going to use these certificates to connect to Postgres in the verify full method. Now, one thing I just want to show you here is that if you are running this onto your local machine, I mean your Postgres on local machine, then here you see that we are passing the subject while we are generating up the certificate. So in this common name attribute, like we have to pass the host name, and since I'm going to run this in the Docker, and the name of the container for my Docker for my Postgres server is going to be the Postgres itself. So that's why like I have given the name as Postgres. But if you are running this on some remote machine or on your local machine, then you have to give the localhost or whatever domain that you have. And also in the client certificates here, so when we are generating up the client certificate here also, like we have to pass the common name, and this time we have to pass the basically the username of that particular Postgres user. So for me, I am using the Postgres because Postgres by default comes with the default user which has the username of Postgres. So I'm using that same user to interact with this Postgres. And after that, we are basically generating up the certificate, and by using that CSR that we created in the last step. So our certificates are created, and now let's go and see some other files that our Postgres is going to use. So here we have two more files, which is this pghba.conf and the postgres.conf. So let's start by this postgres.conf file, because this is the main entry point for our Postgres. And by the way, we will be going to create our own Docker image which will be having these certificates for the Postgres instance. So that we'll also see in this file, which is this Docker file. But before that, let's see this file, which is postgresql.conf. So here, this file has basically the default settings. The few of the settings that I have modified is this This is the first setting that I have modified, which is the HBA file. So here we have to give the location of HBA file, and currently if you see right now my HBA file is in this directory, but once we create up the Docker image and then we kind of while we are creating up the Docker image, we are basically storing this file HBA file into this location, which is etc/postgres. So that's why like I have given the path as this for this HBA file, and this HBA file we're going to see later. And after that, the other changes that are made in this file is this one, which is the SSL on. So by default, we are making the SSL as on to enable the SSL settings. And after that, we are also giving up our CA file. So here we have to give the CA file, and CA file is this one, this root cert. So here we are passing up the root cert path, and then we have to give the SL cert path. So basically, this is the server certificate. And after that, here we are giving up the key file. So we are giving the server key file, which is this one. So this is pretty much what we have done the modification in this file. Now let's open the another file, which is HBA PG_HBA, and this file basically has the configurations for the SL settings. So here the major setting that that is going to play a vital role is this one, this statement basically. So here we are defining the host SSL mode, and then if you take a look at this line, these are the basically the column names just for the reference. So type we are defining up the host SSL, then the database is all. So we want to imply this rule to all the databases. Then we have the users, so and the value for this is also all, which means that we want to apply this rule to all the users who are trying to access the Postgres. And then we have the address. So here I'm not passing any specific IP address or any specific CIDR block. I'm just giving the value as all, which means that any host which is trying to connect to this that will has to certainly follow this rule. And then we are defining up the method, the authentication method basically. So here we are defining up the mode as verify full, and the authentication method is certificates. And we have some default authentication method as well, like the MD5 and trust, so that we are not going to use for the SL mode. So for the SL, like we are forcefully requiring of the client to present the certificates to the Postgres, only then it will be able to connect. So this was it for this file, and now let's see that our Docker file. So this is the Docker file which we are using to generate our custom Postgres Docker image. So we are taking up the base image of Postgres 12, then we are changing up the user to Postgres, and after that, see carefully this statement. So here we are copying up those certificates and basically this configuration file to this directory inside the container, which is etc/postgres, and same we are copying this pg_hba conf file to this directory, and after that, like we are changing up the working directory, and then we are flipping up the users. And why we are flipping up the users? Because we have to give the permissions to those certificates, only then those certificates will be able to access by the Postgres. So this is one of the major requirement, and if you are not passing up these correct configuration and the ownership, then Postgres is not able to bootstrap itself and it will crash. Then after that, like we are also giving up the same permission to our client certificates that are inside the Postgres. And after that, we are starting up the Postgres. We are starting up the Postgres using the config file, our custom config file, basically that we saw a few steps back. And that file is present inside this this location, because if you see line number 6, this one, here we are copying up this file to this location. So that's why inside this container we are able to access this file at this location. So I think this it with the Docker file. Now let's go to the terminal and let's start the next process. But before that, I want to show you one more file which is kind of important file, and that is this one, which is Fabric CA server config.yaml. And basically this file is the default file that we get with the Fabric samples example, but I have done a slight change to this file. So the file that we get with the Fabric samples has a database of SQLite, but here we have modified this to Postgres. And also if you see this statement carefully, this line number 157. So here we are defining our Postgres connection details. So here we are defining up the host name for our Postgres, and since both our Fabric CA server and Postgres both are inside the containers, both are running in the separate containers. That's why we can give the container name, and the port on which our Postgres is running is 5432. And after that, here we are passing up the username, and then we are passing the Postgres password, the user password, and then we are giving the database name, and then we are passing up the SL configurations. So if you carefully see here, we are defining the SL mode as verify full, and after that we are passing the certificates, and these are the client certificates that client require to connect to the Postgres. If we will not pass these certificates, then it is going to crash, and our CA server will not start. It will throw an error that it was not able to connect to the Postgres. So here, if you see, we are passing up the root certificate. So here we are passing the root certificate of this our Postgres server, and then we are passing the client certificates. So here in the SL cert, we are passing the client certificate, and then in the SL key, we are passing the client key that we generated in the like previous steps. So let me show you those certificates again. So inside this client directory, we have all the certificates that are required. So we have this postgres.cert, and then we have postgresql.key, and as well as root.cert. So we are using those certificates here. So this was it for this file. Now let's see this file as well, which is the Docker Compose, this one. And this file has nothing fancy. So we are basically, I have grabbed this snippet from the Fabric samples. Nothing special is here. We are starting up Fabric CA server, and then we are mounting up our Fabric CA server config file, which is present inside the directory Fabric CA server, this one, this directory. And after that, we are passing the certificates as well, the client certificates, to the Fabric CA server, so that when our Fabric CA server starts, it needs those certificates in order to connect to the Postgres. And after that, one more thing I'm doing here, that slight modification I have made. So I have modified this command. So by default, the Fabric examples provide this command only. The default command is this. So here I have added sleep. The reason for adding up the sleep command is that we need the Postgres to be up and running before we run the CA server, because if the Postgres is not up and running and we start the CA server, and then it is going to crash, saying that the database could not be found or the Postgres server could not be found. So that's why we have added a sleep here. And after that, this is the Postgres server, and here we have passed our custom image that we will be going to create in next steps. So we will be going to create our custom image, and the name of that custom image is going to be post:\v1, and then we are starting up our Postgres. And these are the like environment variable that I have set. So database name I have kept as Postgres, database user as Postgres, and the database password as Postgres. So nothing fancy in this file, just Fabric CA server is there and the Postgres is there. Now let's head back to a terminal and let's do this next step, which is we have to build a Docker image. So this is my terminal. Let me just clear up this. Now let's build the Docker image. So I'm going to run this command, which is docker build -t, and then we have to pass the image name and then dot. So dot is basically signifies the context where our Docker file is present. So our Docker file is present inside this current directory. That's why I'm putting dot here. But if your file is in some other directory, then you have to pass the correct location. So as of now, let's hit enter. So our image is created successfully. Now what we can do is, so now we can start the Fabric CA server in the Postgres since our image is ready. So now let's run that Docker Compose file. So I'm going to do Docker Compose up. So you can see that the database is ready to accept the connections, and it is waiting for 5 seconds. So it waited for 5 seconds, and then it kind of started the CA server. So here our database was up and ready, and it was like ready to accept the connections. And if we scroll down here we can see that it is trying to initialize the database, and it is trying to connect to this database with this connection string. If you see this carefully, this is that same string that we passed in our Fabric CA server config file. And here the host name is Postgres, the port is 5432, and these are the certificates that we are passing, the client certificates and the client key, and as well as this is the root certificate, this one, and the SL mode is verify full. So if we scroll down, so here if we see, it is trying to create the database Postgres, but it gave an error because the database was already kind of exist in the Postgres, so that's why it failed. And after that, if you see this part carefully, so here it tried to create some tables onto the database. So it created users table, then it created affiliations table, then it created certificates table, credentials table, revocation authority table, nuances table, properties table. All these tables is tried to create it, and after that it basically loaded some data to those tables. So we're going to take a look like what data it actually loaded onto those tables, and after that, like, it added those affiliations into the database tables. So if we kind of see this file, which is this one, Fabric CA server config. Here we have some default affiliations, this one. So we have affiliation for org1, which is org1.department1 and org1.department2, and the next affiliation is org2.department1. So it kind of loaded all these affiliations to database, and after that, like, our CA server was up and running. So our CA server is up and running, and now let's try to get inside the database and see if these tables are actually present inside the database or not. So let me split up my terminal here. So now let's get inside the Postgres and see if those tables are there or not. So I'm going to do docker exe-it Postgres and then bash. So this way I'm inside the Docker container of the Postgres, and now let's try to connect to the Postgres. So here I'm inside the Postgres. Let me put the password for the Postgres. So password is also Postgres, and here now we are inside this Postgres. So let's list all the tables that are present here. So I'm going to do /d, and it showed me all the relations, basically all those tables that are available inside the database, the Postgres database. And here we can see that all these tables are here, and that we saw that Fabric CA tried to create those tables in this Postgres. And now let's do select star on users table. So let me just zoom it here. Let's do select star and see what data we have inside this users table. So here we can see we have some data, but it is not readable easily. So let me just change the mode here. Here, so now the mode has been changed, and we can see all the details in the column row, in the column wise. And here we can see we have ID with value as admin, then we have token, then we have affiliations, we have type, so identity type is client, and then we have some other details, basically those attributes, those attributes. We have all these things here, and this is basically this identity is for the admin. So when we start up the Fabric CA server starts up with the default identity that we provide in the command, which is admin is the username and the password is admin pw. So it tried to register that user into the database, and it created an entry in the database. And let's do select some certificates as well and see what we have. So by default, if we see the admin is only registered into the database, it is not enrolled yet. So whenever we start our Fabric CA server, the default bootstrap identity get registered, but it does not get enrolled. So let's see the certificates folder. So let's just select star from certificates here, and here we can see we have some record, we have something here in this table, and this is basically the TLS certificate. So as soon as our Fabric CA server start, it creates the TLS certificates. And why it created TLS certificate? Because when we started up this Fabric CA server in the Docker Compose, if we kind of take a look here, we enabled the CA server TLS. So we asked the CA server to create the TLS and run the Fabric CA server in the TLS mode. So that's why if we pass true here, it basically created the TLS certificate in the in this certificates table. So that's why we have the certificate here. And now let's go back to the Fabric CA here. Let's do one thing. Let's try to enroll the admin and see if we get the that certificate here inside this database or not. So I'm going to split this terminal, and let me just zoom it. Let's go inside this terminal, which is CA org1, and let me change my directory. Let's move to the etc-ledger Fabric CA server. So now let's register the admin identity. So the command is Fabric CA client, then enroll. Then here we have to pass the URL. So HTTPS. Then the username was admin, and then the password was admin pw. And then this is running on localhost 7054. And here we have to pass the TLS certs as well. So let's pass the TLS.cert files, and the TLS is present inside this current directory with name TLS cert.pem, and then I'm passing my custom directory where I want to store the admin certificates. So I'm giving the name as admin, and let's hit enter and see. Okay, great. So our admin got enrolled, and those certificates are stored inside this directory, which is admin. Let's clear up this first, and let's do ls here. So we can see we have another directory which is admin. So let's do cd admin, and here we can see we have certificates. So let's try to do one more thing. Let's try to see the content of the certificate, that this certificate belongs to the admin. So let's go to this folder which is CA cert, not the CA cert. Let's go to the sign cert, because here we will be going to have the user certificate. Let me just clear up this, and let me just run up the OpenSL command. So OpenSL x509, and then -in. We have to pass the certificate as an input to this command. So the certificate is cert.pm, and then I want just the plain text. So we got the certificate in the decoded format, and here we can see that the issuer of this certificate was this identity. So this basically issued the certificate, and the certificate was issued to this user. So here we can see the common name is admin, which means that this certificate was issued to the admin, and as well as we can see the expiry detail as well, like when this certificate is going to be expired, and like the date before which this certificate cannot be used. As well as we have the public key as well, and then if we scroll down, we have the signature algorithm as ESCDSA. So Fabric uses X509 for the certificates, but for the keys it uses ECDSA algorithm. And if we see the usage as well, so here somewhere the usage should also be mentioned, that where we can use this certificate. So if we scroll somewhere, it should be here. So we can see that the key usage and this certificate can be used as a digital signature. So let's see if that certificate that is just now created is present inside this certificates table or not. So let me do select star again. So here you can see that we got two records. This was the first record, which was for our TLS cert. And if we scroll down, we can see that this is for the admin. So our admin certificate details are also captured in the database. We can see that clearly that admin certificate is also now present inside this table. And then we can also see the expiry date as well that we saw just now in the certificate when we decoded the certificate. So this was it for the database side. Now let's do one more thing to show you the actual uses of the keys that we created up, like this verification full method. Like what's the whole idea behind using this verification full method. I want to show you one thing. So let me open my database client and I will try to show like how we can pass those keys and then we are able to connect to the database. So let me open my client, database client here. So this is my database client and let me just now try to connect to the Postgres. So let me choose the database as Postgres. And here, one more thing. Okay, I have to show you one more thing. So let's try to do in a normal way first. So the port that is exposed by this container is 5454. You can verify that in the Docker Compose. So here we are exposing the port 5454, and then user is Postgres. The password is also Postgres, and the database name is also Postgres. And now we just go to this SSL mode, and here we have to pass the CA certificate and the client certificates. Only then we will be able to connect. So to demonstrate this, let me just try to do the test connection, and we will see that it failed basically. So here we can see we got a failure message and it said that valid client certificate are required because we have set the mode as verify full. So we have to pass the client certificate, only then we will be able to connect to the Postgres. So let's pass those certificates here. So CA file. So CA file is present inside this client folder, which is root.crt, and then we have to pass the client certificate, which is postgresql.cert, and then we have to pass the client key. So the client key is also present inside the same directory, which is this file postgresql.key. And now if we try to do test connection, here you can see we successfully got connected to the, and here you can see we successfully got connected to the database. Let's do one thing. So here you can see the mode. So let's do the mode as verification full. We want to connect to this CS server in the verification full mode. So here you can see we got some error. Now why we got this error is because this time in the full verification mode, when we pass the host name as localhost, if you see here, we pass the host name as localhost, and let's just do test again. So here you can see that it failed. This host name failed to be verified, to get verified. Why? Because when we generated the certificate for the Postgres, we defined that these certificates are for the domain or the host name with Postgres, which means that it should be able to connect to the database. Like we can only connect to the database through the host whose name is Postgres. So that's why we are not able to connect to this database using this verification full method, because it is trying to connect to that particular host, but it is failing because the host name in the certificate is Postgres, but here we are passing the host name as localhost. So what we can do is we can just modify our etc host file, and then there we can do a mapping of this Postgres host name to localhost, and then here we can pass the Postgres and it should be able to connect. So let's open the terminal. Here let me open one another tab, and here let's try to edit that etc host file. So I'm going to do sudo nano etc/hosts, put the password here, and here we have to basically allow this line. We have to add this line. This one I have already added. So here we are keeping up the name as Postgres. So whenever we just look up for this Postgres hostname, it is ultimately going to target to this endpoint, which is our localhost. So in your case, you have to add this entry. Only then you will be able to connect to the Postgres using this hostname. So let's just exit out of this, and let's go to the base database client, and here now this time let's pass the hostname as Postgres. So now let's verify this again, that the mode is verification full. Yeah, so the mode is verification full only. Now let's try to do the test connection, and this time you can see we successfully got connected, and here you can see that SSL was present, so which means we are able to connect to the database in a secure manner using the certificates and as well as the valid hosts that are present in the certificates. So now let me just add this host here. So it got added here, and if I just open this, there you can see we have all those tables, and also we can just see the content inside all these tables. So inside the user table we have all those details that we saw through the CLI. We have all these details, and then inside this certificate table we have the certificate for the TLS as well as the certificate for the admin. And inside this affiliations table, so basically it created entries for those affiliations when we started up the Fabric CA server, and you can see that for org1 we have two affiliations, which is org1.department1 and org1.department2, but for the org2 we have only one affiliation, which is org2.department1. So that was all for this video. In this video we saw that how we can connect our Fabric CA server with the Postgres in the SL mode with verify full. So using those client certificates we were able to connect to the Postgres in a very secure manner, and we also tried to take a look on how our certificates are stored into the database, and whenever we enroll identity, those certificates are stored in the certificates table, and whenever a user get registered, those details are stored inside the users table. So if you have any doubts or queries, then feel free to drop in the comment box. I will definitely try to answer them. And if you enjoyed this video, then please give a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in the next one.